There is a grain that grows in pure sand, survives temperatures that would kill corn, and matures on rainfall so scarce most crops would never germinate. Yet it still outproduces staples grown under perfect conditions. For thousands of years, it fed civilizations in the harshest deserts and kept entire populations alive when everything else failed. Yet the modern world barely knows its name. It was not forgotten because it failed, but because it thrived without systems that profit from dependence. In an age of droughts, failing soil, and food insecurity, losing it may be one of our greatest oversights. This is the grain the desert gave us. By every rule of modern agriculture, this plant should not exist. It grows where rainfall drops below 10 inches per year. It matures in soils so sandy they cannot hold nutrients. It stands tall in temperatures exceeding 105 degrees Fahrenheit, while other cereals wither and die. This is not a weed clinging to survival. This is a high-yielding grain that feeds hundreds of millions of people in the most unforgiving climates on Earth. It asks for almost nothing, and it returns a harvest that rivals crops grown under irrigation and constant chemical care. The plant produces dense, nutritious seeds in conditions that would destroy corn, wheat, and rice. It finishes its cycle in as little as 60 days. It stores for years without refrigeration. A crop this resilient, this productive, this perfectly adapted to scarcity should be the foundation of global food security. Instead, most people in wealthy nations have never heard of it. The question is not how this grain survives. The question is why we pretend it does not exist. This is pearl millet, scientifically known as Pennisetum glaucum, the most heat-tolerant cereal grain on the planet. Pearl millet originated in the Sahel region of West Africa more than 4,000 years ago. In a band of land stretching from Senegal to Sudan, where the Sahara meets the savanna, ancient farmers domesticated a wild grass that thrived in conditions no other grain could tolerate. From Africa, it spread eastward. Traders and migrants carried it across the Indian Ocean to the subcontinent. By 2,000 years ago, pearl millet had become a staple across the driest regions of India, particularly Rajasthan and Gujarat. The plant grows up to 10 feet tall. Its seed heads resemble dense cylindrical spikes, sometimes reaching 1 foot in length. Each spike contains thousands of tiny seeds, packed with energy and nutrition. Pearl millet uses a specialized photosynthesis pathway called C4 that allows it to capture carbon dioxide efficiently, even when stomata close to conserve water. It does not just survive heat, it was engineered by evolution to dominate it. And for millennia, entire civilizations depended on exactly that ability. In the Sahel, pearl millet was not a choice. It was the only option. Communities planted it in sandy soils that rejected sorghum and ignored maize entirely. When the brief rainy season arrived, farmers scattered seed and waited. 60 to 90 days later, they harvested enough grain to survive another year. The crop anchored pastoral societies. Herders who moved with livestock planted millet in one location, traveled for weeks, and returned to a waiting harvest. The grain required no permanent settlement, no irrigation infrastructure, and no centralized control. In India, pearl millet became known as bajra. It dominated the arid northwest, where monsoons often failed and rivers ran dry. Villages ground it into flour for flatbreads. Families boiled it into porridge. It sustained generations through droughts that destroyed other crops entirely. Across both continents, pearl millet meant survival, not luxury, not variety. Survival in places where the margin between life and death was measured in rainfall that might never arrive. This was food security written into the genome of a plant. and it came with a strength that modern crops cannot match. If you want more forgotten histories like this one, consider subscribing to keep these stories alive. Corn requires at least 20 inches of rainfall to produce a viable crop. Pearl millet matures on less than 10 inches of rainfall. In drought years, corn fails completely. Pearl millet still delivers. The difference lies underground. Pearl millet develops a root system that plunges more than 6 feet into the earth, seeking moisture that shallow-rooted crops cannot reach. Its leaves curl during extreme heat to reduce water loss. Its metabolism adjusts to scarcity without sacrificing yield. Studies comparing the two grains in semi-arid conditions show pearl millet producing harvests, when corn returns nothing. On degraded soils, pearl millet still generates between 400 and 800 kilograms per hectare without irrigation or fertilizer. Corn in the same conditions often fails to germinate. The grain also tolerates poor soil fertility. It grows in acidic and sandy soils, and where organic matter has been stripped away by decades of overfarming. A crop this resilient does not need industrial support. It does not need chemical inputs. It simply grows, adapts, and produces, and that independence made it invisible to systems designed around control. Pearl millet delivers between 10 and 16% protein. It provides more iron than rice or wheat. It contains high levels of zinc, magnesium, and B vitamins that modern diets often lack. The grain is rich in dietary fiber, promoting digestive health and stable blood sugar. Its complex carbohydrates release energy slowly, sustaining workers through long days of labor under brutal sun. This was not accidental. This was evolution meeting human need. Pearl millet is naturally gluten-free. It stores for years when properly dried. It can be ground into flour, popped like corn, fermented into beverages, or cooked whole as porridge. For the communities that depend on it, pearl millet is not a superfood marketed in expensive packaging. It is daily sustenance. It is survival itself. Yet global nutrition programs have historically overlooked it. Development agencies promoted wheat and rice because those grains fit existing supply chains. Pearl millet, grown by smallholder farmers on marginal land, generated no profit for international commodity markets. The grain that could prevent malnutrition across entire continents was dismissed as primitive, a peasant crop, a relic of backwardness. But the nutrition never changed. Only the attention did. The 20th century transformed global agriculture. Governments subsidized corn and rice. International development projects built irrigation systems designed for water-hungry crops. Trade networks connected industrial farms to global markets. Pearl millet fit none of these systems. It needed no irrigation to sell. It required no fertilizer to package. It demanded no machinery to harvest at scale. A crop that grew without inputs generated no profit for the corporations supplying those inputs. Worse, pearl millet empowered independence. Farmers who grew it saved their own seed. They planted without loans. They harvested without debt. They survived without purchasing anything from anyone. As Green Revolution policies spread across Asia and Africa, governments encouraged farmers to abandon traditional millets in favor of high-yielding wheat and rice varieties. These new crops promised larger harvests, but required purchased seeds, chemical fertilizers, and reliable water access. Millions switched. Traditional knowledge faded. Pearl millet acreage declined even in regions where it had sustained populations for millennia. The crop was not replaced because it failed. It was abandoned because it succeeded without creating dependency. And dependency is what modern agricultural economics requires. But the desert remembers. And now the world is beginning to listen. In 2023, the United Nations declared the International Year of Millets, spotlighting pearl millet and its relatives as solutions for climate-stressed agriculture. Research institutions across India, Africa, and the United States are studying its genetics for drought tolerance that could reshape food production. Farmers facing hotter temperatures and less predictable rainfall are returning to pearl millet because it works when nothing else will. In Rajasthan, cultivation is expanding again. In the Sahel, development programs now promote germinate alongside improved varieties bred for even higher yields. Nutritionists are rediscovering its value. Food companies are experimenting with millet-based products for health-conscious consumers. The grain once dismissed as backward is appearing in markets that previously ignored it. Climate models predict that by 2050, vast regions currently growing corn and wheat will become too hot and dry for those crops. Pearl millet has already proven it can thrive in those conditions. It has been proving it for 4,000 years. They overlooked it because it needed nothing from them. They dismissed it because it did not fit their systems. They buried its reputation under crops that demanded dependence. But the desert grain survived, and as the world grows hotter, it is ready to feed us again.